Okay. Let's see. So looking at outstanding RFCs, we've got quite a few here. I know a lot of these are in some nearly completed state. Let's take a look at the first one, or the oldest one here on the list. I think this was basically in a state where we're just waiting on Dan, your possible approval or questions.
Oh, okay. I thought I had done that. I'll take care of that today.
Cool. Next up, we have this low profile mode to memory calculator for Java.
Yeah, I think this one is going to be merged. I just have not, I don't think I've had time to actually do it yet. It's just kind of back burner to some other tasks that we're working on.
Okay. Next up on the list, we've got the Go Bomb RFC.
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of like additions or shifts around sort of the bomb in the ecosystem, which might impact this pretty significantly. So I might suggest putting this to the end and going through some of the other RFCs around bombs first, if that's okay.
Of course, we can do that. Next up is the auto-generate reference documentation RFC.
Yeah, this is me. I just put in an update to this this morning. That's changing over the proposed means of supplemental documentation to parsing out the README. So I'll just wait for everyone to have their chance to go through and read it up. Nothing's really changed. And if you've been up to date on the stuff in this discussion in the comments, it's nothing really anything crazy or new. So yeah, this is just trucking along slowly, trying to pick at it when I have time.
Awesome. Let's see, proposal to have a standard interface for enabling remote debugging. I took a look at this morning, and I don't think I had any objections to what was written here. While I maybe don't fully comprehend the reasoning behind having a separation of launch flags versus other time flags, I don't object, considering you're allowed to put both. So yeah, I went ahead and proved this. Any other outstanding questions or concerns on this one? Correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is for the steering committee. So I think this is in like a mergeable state at this point, considering Dan, you're the only other person who could have approved this.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to ask. I can go through and merge this one too.
Awesome. Let's see. I think these are net new now. So proposal to add a SIFT build pack.
Yeah, so this is just a pretty standard utilities build pack, kind of similar to what we have with UPX or watch exec. It's just going to go through, install the binary if you put a certain key into the build plan. The thinking behind this is just that multiple Buildpacks might want to use SIFT for source bomb generation, and so being able to easily drop the have the binary added to the path for you would save some work. I think probably the only the only feedback that came in that is kind of just not cut and dry is just that SIFT also has Go libraries. So another potential implementation path, instead of using a binary, would be using those libraries directly. I haven't explored too much with those libraries. I think the concern with that is just what that would do to the size of the build pack binaries themselves, if it would bloat them a lot. But I haven't done any tests to see if it would or wouldn't. So if there is interest in going down that route, we could potentially do some more testing there to see if that would be a better way than using the binary.
I think. So is the proposal that you would embed the binary into the build pack itself and then have that run the test? Because I thought the whole point was that we would install the SIFT binary, and then each individual thing that wanted to have a SIFT bill of materials, like each build pack that wanted to have a SIFT bill of materials, would have to run SIFT inside of that given build pack. Is that am I
Yes.
so
No, you've got it. Yeah.
So I guess I just don't understand what the advantage of importing the library is.
If you imported the library, then you wouldn't technically need this build pack. You wouldn't have to have a CLI installed. You wouldn't have to shell out to it. It would just be some, something that you would write in your, possibly in Packet or Libpack or something that, kind of exposes a calculate, SBOM or something function.
But that would require your build pack to be written in Go so that you could.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's. I think you brought that up in your discussions with Sam, and I think that's probably that'd be my biggest fireback of. I think it reduces the utility of having something like SIFT, or we could increase the utility of SIFT by having it be a build pack that provides that dependency.
Yeah, and this RFC doesn't prevent anyone from doing that if they want to. This is totally voluntary to opt in and use this build pack. If you still decide that library makes more sense for your use case, you can absolutely do that.
For sure.
Awesome. I think I went through here and approved this, but I think we're looking also for more utilities maintainers to check this out. I can't remember off the top of my head who all is on that. Let's see. Arjun, Tim, Sophie, you're both here, I think. Worth taking a look, seeing what y'all think. Okay, anything else on this? Cool. Then moving on, we've got this stack bomb RFC. I think we had pretty much reached quorum for votes on this one, but it's a new one. So this is the first working group we've talked about it. Sophie, you want to give some background on this?
Yeah, so this RFC is essentially just saying that we are going to be doing the build materials for stacks in accordance with the direction that the CMB project is going. And they have an RFC open proposing that we support CycloneDX, SIFT, and SPDX build materials for the stack run image. So this RFC just says, we're going to go just with CycloneDX and SIFT for now, and it's going to be located at this /CNB SBOM layer that's been defined in the upstream CNB RFC. And I think the most important part of this whole RFC is just the schema. If you scroll down a little bit, it has the minimal set of fields for the SIFT BOM and the CycloneDX bill of materials. And so eventually, once we implement this RFC, it will be all of our stack run images will have both CycloneDX BOMs and SIFT BOMs available. And this is blocked on getting merged in on the upstream CNB RFC getting merged in because it might change. So we might have to change this a little bit. I think that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll just want to track any last minute changes that show up in that upstream RFC and make sure we reflect them appropriately here. All right. Any comments on this one?
About this.
Sorry, what was that, Frankie?
I just had a question about this. So for this one specifically, does the currently released version of the life cycle and so forth, and I guess like the versions of the Buildpack API that we're on, are they all like ready to integrate with a stack bomb that is stored in this way? Or do we have like upstream blockers is basically what I'm asking.
I don't think that there's a release available right now that has that. I think it would probably be the next release once they pass that RFC.
And I'm not entirely sure that there is, in the long term, a desire to have a stack bomb get merged with the Buildpack bomb. I think the expectation is it will end up on the built image. So you'll have the actual stack with the layers that include the bomb and the label that tells you which layer contains the stack bomb. That is just like independently consumable by any tool that can like manipulate images. And so I think the expectation is that it will just be something that's available, that if you want to get the bomb, you can get it by pulling the contents of that particular layer out of the image. So to answer the question, I think we're blocked on an upstream RFC that just is like a definition of the like stack specification to say like this is how stacks should declare SBOMs, but I don't think we're blocked technically on a life cycle or platform release for this particular RFC.
Cool, that makes sense, because we can just start putting files with the correct schema in the correct location and it'll all sort of work when the releases come out. Great.
Yeah, I think it's about establishing a convention more than anything.
Something I just thought about right now, and obviously I wrote the RFC, but we've been discussing like Cyclone DX and SIFT, but what's the reason that we are not interested in SPDX, if anybody knows? Because I'm pretty sure if we like generate this with SIFT, that we can pretty easily get SPDX as well, which is one of the formats that's supported in the upstream RFC.
I think mostly initially we were just trying to support one that had the most flexibility of use cases, which I think Cyclone DX fit a little bit more into that category. I think now looking at it, when we're generating using a tool that's capable of producing any of the formats, it's worth reconsidering maybe the believed cost of implementing all three, considering the way we had previously implemented bill of materials was really focused on just Cyclone DX itself. I also don't think we should maybe consider it for this. It's certainly something we could consider opening in the future. Like the upstream spec does allow us to do that. And it's maybe worth just getting these two through the process before we go back and consider what that might mean for introducing a third format. All right. Anything else on stack bill of materials? All right. And then in a similar vein, we've got an RFC for Buildpack dependency software bill of materials. Tim, you want to talk to this one a little bit?
Yeah, so as you said, the equivalent of the previous RFC, but kind of detailing the process for the generation of SBOM information for Buildpack dependencies. Yeah, so a lot is the same. We outlined here or it's outlined here the two formats that we aim to target, Cyclone DX and SIFT. There is an upstream RFC that goes a bit into detail on the proposed structure, but Dan rightly pointed out that it's not super specific about what, for example, the files here that I've listed at in the summary. So if you, yeah, the layer.bomb, launch.bomb and build.bomb, it doesn't go into detail about what those should include specifically. As far as things exist right now, I believe the Dan commented with a proposal of what that might be, what the definitions of those files might be. And as far as we do right now, the node modules BOM Buildpack appends the tool, so like Cyclone DX, the bill of materials for that, to the build BOM, and the app specific or the node modules BOM to the launch BOM. It's unclear to me what then we might want to do for the layer BOM. I guess that's up for discussion. But yeah, that's the gist of it, I think. It's worth noting also that on the Buildpack side, Buildpack authors would have to opt into or specify which formats they support in the Buildpack tunnel under the SBOM field, which is under Buildpack.
Awesome.
There was one other comment I added on that really just before the meeting started. I'm curious what people think about, because there's two formats here. It seems like SIFT is kind of the primary one we want to support, and Cyclone DX is kind of like secondary in that it can be generated from the SIFT one. Do we want to potentially have like an environment variable to disable the second generation of Cyclone DX? Just thinking like that could be a way to reduce work, maybe reduce the time it takes to calculate some of this stuff.
My hope with any of the BOM generation is that we could very quickly convert from SIFT to Cyclone DX. The hope being like, do you have a SIFT BOM? Then like reading that into memory, moving the fields around and writing that back out as a second JSON file would hopefully be really fast. Hopefully not anywhere near the level of like human perception. I think maybe there's a question about size. I can imagine if you're building a massive container with lots and lots of tiny dependencies, you might have like megabytes worth of bill of materials. But even then, you have a massive container. Do you really care necessarily about a few megabytes of bill of materials?
Yeah,
I think the thing I had a concern more about not including Cyclone DX was that SIFT does not appear to be supported as a bill of materials format anywhere outside of the SIFT ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the concern with performance at this point is that if you're using the SIFT tools, there's no, at least the CLI, there is no conversion mechanism, and there's no option to make it output both formats at once. So you're basically left with double scanning. There's a couple upstream issues against SIFT to include that. So I'm optimistic that it will in short order have that ability. But at the moment it doesn't. And so that was really the main reason I mentioned it, was if there's potential concerns with that, but it could be just a short-lived problem too that maybe we deal with for the time being.
I also can see this RFC as really outlining like a ideal eventual world, we would like to see eventually both Sift Bomb and Cyclone DX Bomb. But if initial implementations are only one of those things to move us closer in the direction, that is probably fine as an initial implementation goes.
That seems reasonable. I'll go back and answer my own comments with a no for now.
I do wonder though, like maybe this is not relevant now, but down the road, say should SPDX come into the play or another format, how do we decipher between, you know, is there a use case where folks want all formats or just a specific format to, you know, are most use cases solved because, you know, end users are looking for a specific format to scan against. So I wonder if maybe something like an optional flag or a way to delineate, you know, what format you're looking for in the end could be beneficial, but it may not be a conversation needed for now in this RFC.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more of the concerns about being too optimistic about what bombs users would want to see. I think like in previous instances where we've done stuff like add flags that disable features or remove certain functionality, a lot of the concern there has been about either size of the produced image or total build time. But if we can do bomb generation where we basically only have a single scan and then we do a really fast conversion between the different formats, and then the actual bombs themselves are on the order of like a few kilobytes, then like we probably don't have either one of those concerns. So just like to like dig deeper before we start adding like flags on to things to disable them, without really fully understanding maybe why we would want to do that.
I think that's a really fair point.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the performance won't be noticeable really, but that's one area where like if you were doing like local dev work and rebuilding your containers and you might not care about source bomb in that case, maybe a flag to disable would be nice to shave some of that time off, but I'm hopeful that it just won't be a significant addition.
Yeah, that specifically flag to disable bomb generation period, that I think is worth talking about. I think that's different than what you were saying though, Elliot. You were talking about being able to specify which type of bomb you wanted.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think we did talk about this initially when we were doing the bomb work. I can't remember off the top of my head if it was in the RSC or not, but there was definitely a conversation about whether or not we allow people to disable the functionality for performance reasons. There are a few folks on the call right now who actually worked on those RFCs. Does anyone know like what we kind of settled on?
Yeah, so if I recall correctly, with the Node engine and Node.js ones, we put it as a potential future feature to be able to disable the generation of the bill of materials. I think my biggest pushback when we were writing it was I would like to hear people having it as an actual problem that it's taking them significantly longer to generate the bill of materials before we let them shut off, because I'd rather have bill of materials be sort of an automatic thing than not.
And speaking for the Go bomb, there was a bit more of a discussion there because in our initial like investigations, the tool that we were using, the Cyclone DX tool, took like a noticeable amount of time to generate a bomb in the Golang world. It was, you know, even a trivial hello world app was like 5 seconds. So we did have a more of a discussion on that RFC about like how do we disable this because it's going to be noticeable. And then I think part of that conversation morphed into like a more general how would we enable, disable, or have consistency about enabling and disabling bomb generation across the Buildpacks. So I should say, like, I haven't tried Sift, so I don't know how, like, what the performance of Sift is like. So it could be a non-issue, or it could be a limitation of like tools that parse Golang modules, in which case this would likely be an issue for Go. And sort of like by extension, we probably would want to have consistency then across the build packs as well.
We ran some we calculated the times for Sift a while ago, and I'm pretty sure if you run it on on an image, it's kind of slow, takes around like 5 seconds. But if you run it on like source code, I think the average we saw against like a bunch of different apps was like less than a second.
Cool. Well, it's certainly something to keep an eye on. I think it kind of falls into the same category as that the BP debug RFC that we looked at earlier, where it's just like we should define a common interface and have Buildpacks implement against that. But I also agree that we should get some feedback and really understand what it looks like before we just start implementing things. All right. Anything else on this Buildpack dependencies SBOM RFC?
I would like to clarify my understanding. And this is sort of like both on this RFC specifically and also more of a meta process question. So, and this is going to segue back into the GoBomb RFC, which I noticed we haven't talked about yet. So, is the intention of this RFC to be like a reference point for language families to implement SBOMs for themselves? And I guess the concrete question I'm trying to ask is like, as someone who is halfway through writing a GoBomb RFC, is the intention that I would still write a GoBomb RFC and reference this RFC, or is the intention that this RFC is like a blanket RFC for all of them, and I can just go ahead and start implementing based off of this sort of language agnostic one?
To me, before this point, well, really before the last few RFCs landed, it wasn't clear that we had a path that allowed us to say, generally, here is a toolkit that all build packs can use and generate particular formats of a bill of materials. It feels like we are converging towards SIFT as that toolkit. In that scenario, I think it does make a lot of sense for us to question whether or not we need language-specific RFCs, because they will probably be nearly identical with the exception of the name of the language ecosystem they impact. Traditionally, as a steering committee member, I have left that decision-making process to the folks who are the maintainers for the language family. But also being a Go language maintainer, I would say specifically for that one, I would not expect you to have to write a RFC that basically outlines what's already been said in top-level RFCs.
Perfect. That's super clear. So to segue into the GoBomb RFC conversation, I think I would like to close that RFC with a comment basically summarizing what you just said, Ryan, pointing back to this RFC here.
All right. Anything else on RFC front? Anything we missed?
There's one thing I'm not clear on for the Buildpack Deps SBOM one. We had some conversation about configuring like enable disable, and it's kind of sounded like there was a resolution in terms of tone of conversation, but I'm not clear on what the resolution was. Like, what are we doing with respect to configuration here? Or is that still up in the air?
To me, it felt like the resolution was that we would provide no configuration. We are going to keep an eye on things like what is the actual performance profile of running the bill of materials generation on different language ecosystems. And given that information and possible user feedback about that information, consider whether or not we should enable the, or disable bill of materials through a configuration flag. I don't know if I said that any clearer. I think the short answer is we're not going to have any configuration to begin with.
Cool. Okay, that makes sense.
All right, we can move on to the remaining standing items. libcnb v2 updates and questions. Does anyone know what's going on with this particular item?
I have one piece of information. I wrote like mostly a note to myself in the future topics about this. So I went to the Buildpacks author tooling working group meeting on Friday, and I brought up the conversation that we had here prior around, Ryan, you opened that pull request to remove the layer contributor concept, and we all were sort of surprised that it just sort of merged. And the understanding is that the whole V2 branch right now is sort of up for discussion. So like, it seems that the message from that subgroup is, feel free to continue making pull requests. They might just keep on getting merged. That's not the end of the conversation. That's sort of the beginning of the conversation, because that makes the V2 branch a sort of working prototype that we can integrate with. Forrest, maybe you have more context on this, because I think you had talked about trying to integrate this alpha V2 branch, but that's what I know so far.
Yeah, I talked a bigger game than I actually had time for, apparently. I wanted to try and see if I could integrate this, but I haven't had any time to actually do it.
All good.
Interesting. All right, well, I'll just keep opening up radical PRs and we'll see what happens from there. Okay, that gets us to the end of the written agenda. Is there anything that folks have forgotten to add to the agenda that maybe we want to discuss now? Does not sound like it. All right. Well, with that, this brings us to the end of the meeting. And so we'll see y'all next week.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.